Okay. Okay. So first, last week I announced that this week I was going to make an announcement, and the announcement is that next week at this time we will have a new demo of Kleros 2.0. We are going to now show you the way better version, more complete with the interfaces. So you are going to see almost, the final version. So don't miss next community call because it's going to be interesting. So yeah, JB will make a demo. Yeah, it's going to be super, super cool. So most of the things going on this week are around, V2. Then we had quite some interesting conversations regarding how to set parameters and how to write policies. I think I'm going to let William make his comments on this as he's the expert here.
Yeah. There are a lot of things that go into parameter setting. I'm writing a blog article about these topics that you'll be able to read soon. There are a lot of, we have this calculator, which I recommend people play around with to see sort of how parameters are set, which handles sort of three main big parameters that determine fees and deposits, which are the fee per juror, the min stake, and then the alpha, where the sort of amount you lose or win as a deposit, or you lose as a deposit that is eventually redistributed, is min stake times alpha, so basically the fee and the deposit. And then there are all these other parameters that are set without, that aren't in the calculator that I have sort of rules of thumb for, that I will discuss all those rules of thumb in the article, so I encourage you to read all of that. There's one parameter in particular that's caused a lot of controversy in recent days. People have discussed on forums and Telegram groups, which is the size of the min stake in the humanity court. So this was raised substantially after the most recent random parameter updates, basically because since the intervening previous random parameter updates, we got a lot of statistical evidence that the rate at which jurors vote to reject cases in the humanity court is very high. So whereas most Kleros cases are 60-30, 60-40, 70-30 in terms of how likely the most common outcome is to win the case. In the humanity court, it's 86% vote to reject, or cases are voted to reject, which causes problems for disincentivizing lazy strategies. So there's this risk that if the parameters are set improperly, an attacker can just set a bot to stake in the court and then vote automatically without sort of giving individual input in the case. And one of the things that the parameter calculator attempts to do is make that unprofitable by sort of calibrating the fee and the deposit so that if the attacker is always voting to reject, for example, because that's the most common outcome, that they'll lose money. Because even if they're right most of the time, the deposit will be large enough that they'll have a negative value on average. But because the rate of rejection is so high in this court, which may be totally legitimate, maybe by the time that cases get to the humanity court, the child RICA system is flagging correct cases that need to be rejected. That strategy is harder to disincentivize without having a really high deposit. So then you get into sort of questions that the community can have about, how risk averse are jurors, even though in the current parameters, the expected value of being a juror is still positive, because the rate of honest jurors being ruled coherent is really, really high. It's 97%. If you're right and you gain $15 and you're wrong and you lose $150 or something, that's maybe not a risk that most people want to take, even if they make an expected positive value. So then you get into questions of how to balance risk aversion against attack resistance, and are we willing to sacrifice, some resistance to lazy voting, where now maybe it's only lazy voting can be profitable, but it's still less profitable than honest voting. So by lazy voting, you sacrifice an opportunity cost to have a risk aversion profile, which is sort of better represents jurors. So interesting questions, whether we continue to discuss on Telegram groups and forums. I think Green proposed a set of parameter updates to the humanity court, that has a smaller deposit, so it sort of makes the sacrifice of attack resistance for better risk profiles. And you know, I encourage you to read the article that goes into all of my thoughts about these kinds of topics when it comes out.
Yeah, so I mean, that's to say that we don't. I mean, parameter updates are not something we take lightly, and also there are some things that we can, I mean, figure out at the level of the economic model that we have, which of course we work on improving. But other things about parameters is empirical, you know, practical information that we need. I mean, how much effort jurors need to put into cases. That depends, you know, the type of case. It depends on the expertise of jurors because there is a learning effect. That depends also, not the effort, but, you know, the cost. I mean, if you need someone to solve a case which requires, I mean, a very specialized knowledge, it's way more expensive than what you would need for someone to solve a case that only needs to, I mean, see if the face is looking at the camera or not. I mean, maybe, William, you can comment on, I mean, how you estimate currently this empirical or practical, effort, so people understand better how, I mean, a big picture of how parameter suggestions are made.
Yeah. So the estimations for how much effort cases take is particularly subjective. So please, people who are staking these courts, like, give feedback on how much effort you're taking to do cases. I have values that are in the sort of calculator I use. I think people are intimidated by the calculator because there's lots of math, but this like particular input of the effort is like not mathematical. It's completely subjective. And a lot of those like estimates, you know, like are just things that I sort of eyeballed and was like, okay, this seems like it's taking this much effort. And then I like shared with people and was like, do you think this is right? And people are like, maybe. We've gotten some feedback on these, and like to improve these estimates, you know, like people in the community have given feedback. This seems too low, this seems too high. So that, you know, they've like iterated a little bit like over like the empirical results, but there's nothing I can look at in the sort of data that the court has had and like that uses a good proxy for effort. You can look a little bit at like whether people are like staking or destaking in certain courts. But there's so many like confounding factors with that. It's hard to like piece it out and be like, oh yeah, like people are being paid well here. They're flocking to the court. The other like estimates, there are other estimates that the calculator takes about like how likely someone is to be right if they rule if they sort of make an honest effort and look at the case. Like that's something that it would be helpful for people to like comment on too. Like how subjective does this case look? Like how likely do I think I'm going to be if I make an honest effort based on sort of your own subjective opinion? We have some heuristics we could take from past data where we can just look at the average percentage of people who were ruled coherent and use that as a proxy. But for the effort, there's no good proxy. So please give your feedback.
Yeah, and we also made a group for people to discuss specifically about parameters and policy. So if you are, I mean, especially if you are recurring juror at Kleros, I mean, your opinion is especially valuable because you have the first-hand experience of solving the cases, right? We don't need you to, I mean, study the equations or the calculator, but we just need you to provide input about effort and the time it takes for you to solve cases in different courts. So please join that group and yeah, help us improve that. So yeah, we have that. Another cool thing this week, we had yesterday the publication of this extremely interesting ethnography about the app we launched some time ago called Proof of Humanity. You might have heard of that. So Jamila, I think, is here. So she is the author of that report. So maybe you can comment a bit about that, Jamila.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you, Federico. Basically, as part of like my research, my PhD studies, together with two other researchers from Blockchain Golf, Sofia Kassar and Tara Merck, we have studied like the whole governance development in Proof of Humanity. And it was very interesting because that was something that was unfolding right there, and we were able to witness it. And we have so many friends and people we know and work with that are part of this DAO. So It was extremely interesting, and thank you so much to everyone who contributed, and Kleros team, and everyone from basically like, you know, big Proof Humanity community. So we published those findings in Proof Humanity forum, and it was yesterday. We received quite feedback already, and we are very much welcoming feedback. So you could either write to me or to either of the researchers, or we created a Google form, which is you know, more convenient way to gather all of the feedback. So yeah, we published it both in Spanish and English. So you're feel free to check it. It's quite long, so it's like 50 pages, but there is executive summary which you could just like skim through if you don't have much time to go into details. Other than that, this is like the first part where we try to explain and basically cover, because DAO governance is something that is being discussed in many communities, not just Kleros or Humanity. And perhaps we would be able to come up with some recommendations for better governance within DAOs, but those are the things that are happening that, you know, just they're happening, and then you learn from that. So yeah, it has been fantastic. Again, I'm very grateful to all Kleros team, Kleros community, Proof Humanity community. So yeah, and because like one of the disclaimers that we're making there, and I can like repeat it here. Well, I'm obviously part of Kleros community and also part of Blockchain Golf research effort. We have Tara, who is an ethnographer. She's not affiliated with either Democracy Earth Foundation or Kleros, and we have Sophia, who was a researcher at Democracy Earth. So you can't really blame that the report is biased in any way, because we had like people from different backgrounds. Therefore, yeah, I think if you just take a look and maybe provide your feedback, whether you think there's certain things that you could be improved, it would be very, very much appreciated. Yeah.
Thank you, Jamila. Actually, you know, the co-authors look a bit like a tribunal for arbitration. You know, one chosen by each party, and then the third one independent. Of course, joking. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a way to reach neutrality, right? And thank you so much, Jean, for, I was just about to say that I could share that in the chat for those who would be interested. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that's awesome. I read it yesterday. I mean, it's a bit long, but I mean, it's awesome, and it's very, I'd say, entertaining, maybe especially for me, because I know a bit the story. But if you, do check it, because I don't think, I mean, this is probably the first study of its, kind in the ethnography of like the governance crisis in the, Web3 in DAO. So it's, do read it. It's strongly recommended. Okay, so we have JB also here. I don't know, JB already announced that next week we are going to have the demo of V2. So hopefully we will do it. Otherwise, there's going to be sober memes all over. We're going to make it, right?
Yeah, sure. So I guess it's a bit noisy on my side. I'm in a car. I'm just listening.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so next week, the V2 demo. Let me also now, another thing. So the incubator is running great in Lisbon, and each time I see the pictures on Twitter, I have big FOMO. I will be there in a couple of months, less than a couple of months actually, to spend time with the teams and help them in their projects. So we are already in the fourth workshop. We already did strategy design, network effects, smart contracts is coming. We did user interviews, we did game theory. Last week we had two teams, Lens Tags and The Batch, present. And now we're going to have another team. See, Kirsten is there. So Kirsten, are you ready to present? Kirsten is from Talent Layer, which is protocol.
Yes, for sure.
Infrastructure on work markets of the future. So yeah, the stage is yours, Kirsten. Go ahead.
Okay. Much for having me. So yeah, as Federico mentioned, we are building Talent Layer. So a problem that we solve is one of the biggest problems in labor markets globally. So a worker or a hirer, you probably use a bunch of different platforms to try to find the right person. Forums when I was trying to, and even more when I was hiring. And really, the reason why we have to use so many platforms to find the right person to work with is siloization. So we basically have a bunch of these walled gardens that exist in hiring that trap users and lower the liquidity of the labor market. And this is really, really similar to the problem that we saw in DeFi, or rather, that we saw in traditional finance before DeFi. And what DeFi was able to do is take down to a protocol level all of the liquidity, transactions, so that you can have an infinite number of actual platforms be built that leverage this pooled liquidity on the back end. So what we're trying to do at Talent Layer is bring that DeFi vision to labor markets to be able to increase the frequency of transactions, make it easier to find the right partner, and also make it easier for platforms to solve the chicken and egg problem. So the chicken and egg problem is being able to make sure that you have enough hirers and workers that meet each other's needs on your platform. And that's super, super, super hard today. So where are we at? We are currently live on a few test nets, and we have the first 3 marketplaces built on Talent Layer going to mainnet at the end of Q1. So I highly recommend checking out our documentation if you want to get in the weeds, because all of our dev tools and the protocol as a whole is ready to start tinkering with. And if anyone's building work tech, we totally want to hear from you. So we are also part of the current Kleros incubator, and that's been super, super valuable for us. Hi, William. We have a call with William in a few days to go over tokenomics. JB's been immensely helpful in helping us figure out upgradability and some of the complexity that comes with building, decentralized protocols for the long term. And it's just been a real pleasure being involved.